Eyes wide open. Something ancient lingers, whispers in the fog, footsteps on empty trails, and shadows that don't belong. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
I'm curious about whether you ever saw something that would look like the Yeti or the Bigfoot while you were working in these facilities, because some people have reported things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I even have personal experience with the Bigfoot and the skunk apes and the Yetis and all the different types of. I remember at my teen years, around 16 years of age, there was a large white Chewbacca type being, 8 or 9 feet tall, and I was camping out in Florida, down there south near the Everglades, and it was probably around 150 yards away. It was far, but it was an open field. It was at dawn. And I just saw this being walking next to the fence line. And it was like 5 feet higher than the fence posts, which are 4 feet tall. And the stride of this thing was like over 6 feet. And I literally stopped in my tracks and watched this thing walk all the way across. And when I go back and check the dates, now that there's these things online, you can look for spottings of these extraterrestrials. I've noticed that in the area I was, this being has been seen many, many times by many people. And that was a great confirmation for me. It was greater confirmation for me once I started working in the labs to actually see these beings. These beings are been here a very long time. They work with the inner earth beings. They're here to collect and gather data and DNA from all the living species and plants and water and animals in the water and fish and everything. And they're cataloging this and putting it on a type of vault somewhere in order to preserve, what Earth really is, kind of a museum for Earth somewhere. And that's why you can never get these guys on film too much, because they have the ability to teletransport themselves at will.
Really?
Yes. And they can be very mysterious and get out of somewhere really quick.
Well, I just want to say this. It is amazing that we don't have a widespread understanding of the reality of Bigfoot, given the thousands and thousands of eyewitness sightings, the tracings of footprints, the very bizarre cases of property damage where fingernail marks have clawed right through vehicles and things like this. Why do you think we have such a hard time accepting these eyewitness testimonies of Bigfoot?
Well, these are very large animals. I don't consider them too much human, I'll say. But they have a consciousness and they have a job to do. And they are probably the lowest maintenance extraterrestrial that I know.
We're here with Chuck. He had a Bigfoot sighting in 2006, and it was a little bit after midnight, and he's going to share his story with us, which we really appreciate. So Chuck, if you could give us a general description of what happened.
All right. I was coming up the road. As disclaimer, I was out here squatching. It's, I got into it after I watched the documentary. That's what I was out here doing. So just to get that on record. I was coming home. My area is pretty far away. So I was coming back. I wasn't thinking about anything really, just listening to music. I was coming around the curve, and when I was coming up the hill, I had an old Ford Taurus. It was not a good car. I was trying to get up speed to get up the hill, so I didn't have a hard time with it. When I was building up speed, I was probably down, I would say at the curve sign, maybe a little closer. I noticed an orange reflection, like a deep orange, like almost red, but not quite. It was like a burnt orange maybe. And I was coming up, and at first glance, I just thought they were the clearance markers for driveways, so I didn't pay them any attention. And then when I was coming up the road, it's hard to see from this angle, but there's kind of like a little dip there. When I came over the dip, and I started coming up, my headlights hit the figure. It was a dark figure. Completely.
Show us where we're standing.
It was right here. The tree. This tree right here was standing right there.
I'll go stand by it. Right about here?
Move over to the right.
This?
Yeah, I'm not close enough. Where you could see his shoulder, his left shoulder, you couldn't see the figure's shoulder. It was behind the tree, and you could only see about from the middle of the clavicle over to his right. That's all I could see. As far as the description, the height of it was, you could see maybe see a branch over Charlie's head. It was about even with that, maybe a little bit, maybe a couple inches higher. I'm not sure. I mean, it was 10 years ago. Charlie's right shoulder is in. Bring it in.
It's close.
Yeah, it's about there. Its shoulder is. I know this sounds stupid, but its shoulder looked lower than what Charlie's is right now. But its head was higher than Charlie's head is right now. I know it sounds almost impossible to describe.
You know, most Bigfoot researchers, they tend to ignore all this stuff, and they only take into account legitimate stuff that's within their acceptable belief system, I guess. They tend to throw everything else out the back door and not consider it. But unfortunately, you know, about 60% of the evidence is all that stuff they want to throw away. You know, and I started seeing this stuff, and it just didn't really make sense, and I wasn't into accepting it. I take it into account because I was talking to people that I really trusted after a period of time and forming a relationship over with them, and they were stuck on these stories of this weird stuff. And you know, I just kind of chalked it up to, you know, they're eccentric people, you know, and a lot of people that have these ongoing encounters and stuff like that, they're not normal people. They're kind of weird. You know, they all have a weirdness to them, you know, and I took it into consideration because I didn't think that it was doing myself any justice to not take and to consider this evidence. But it was something that I really couldn't accept, you know, at that time. But as time went on, and I kept putting cameras in places or trying to hide them and trap these things, create traps, you know, to where there's no way they could know it's there and there's no way they could avoid it. But they do every time, you know. And over a period of time, you know, I was becoming more and more accepting in it and having less and less faith in the technology I was using and the tactics I was using. Because I knew I was doing everything right and I was where I needed to be, except it wasn't coming together. And, you know, finally how it all peaked out was I was working at this location for a long period of time. We started it in 2008 in this one spot in the very beginning. And this site in particular was on an island close to where I lived. It's called Harstein Island. And we were following a report where we went to this location where these renters were at along the road, North Island, on Harstein Island Drive North. And it's in an area historically, though, that we were able to look back and see through the BFRO database where over a 10-year period of time there was like 8 or 10 sightings crossing the road in this spot. And more than once there was multiples of them seen, like 2. And all different people had seen them. They were either going home or they were just driving through the island. It was all at night when they were seeing these things. And so we were feeling pretty good about the area because we had historical data to back up the new reports. I had 5 cameras in this one little tight area. It was a really small area where they were crossing in this, basically an alleyway between 2 roads, and there were people living on these 2 sides. And this area stretched for about 1.5 miles down to a beach. One day, it was November 11th, 2010, And I had ran for sheriff that year, and I lost the election, and I think that was the day you were supposed to pull up your campaign signs. So I went all around, and I head to the island, and I'm pulling signs. And I just happened to be in the area, and I usually go here about once a week and check my cameras and do other things too. I might put toys out on tree stumps or leave stuff around to see if it gets picked up or moved, and just things of that nature. I used to always carry a gun out in the woods with me. Not for Bigfoot, just because you never know what can happen, and there's animals out there, and you never know. And something that made me feel safer. And I was a cop, so I carried a gun at work all the time anyways. So, but this time in particular, I didn't. And I do think there's significance to the fact that I didn't that day. I didn't pay any attention to it, but I was aware of it, that I just had this strange feeling from the minute that I pulled in there, that I shouldn't be there, that I should just go home. But there's no reason for me to pay attention to that intuition or that feeling, so I ignored it. And I went and checked the first camera, and I did find what looked like a faint impression by the camera to the side, about this long, the shape of a foot, but no real detail other than the needles were kind of flattened in that spot. And that's something that I would look for, because the substrate in this area, it's, there's a lot of places these things walk and they don't leave any tracks. They have to step in the right type of soil to leave an impression. And but it was something I paid attention to. I was excited to look at that camera when I got home, because it certainly looked like something with a big foot stepped by the camera to check it out or something. And I kept feeling unsettled, a strange feeling of dread, whatever that means. It's like the whole world was starting to get really close around me. And it was kind of overcast and slightly drizzling, but quiet at the same time. No birds making a noise, nothing. So I walked from that camera and I went down to another one, which is about 75 yards off the road, in this old site where there's an old outhouse next to there, and it's like a little alder stand. And I'm checking this camera there, and then my awareness really gets heightened, and I'm just sensing all kinds of weird stuff and not feeling right, feeling dread, feeling like the world is going to end, kind of strange feeling, but out of context. There's no reason for it. Just feel bad, and not sick or anything, but just, I can't even explain to you. It's nothing I've ever felt before and nothing I've ever felt since then. And it kept building and building and building. And I have like 25 keys on this ring. And I'm going through the keys and I'm trying this camera. And every key I'm checking, I feel more of a sense of urgency to leave. And more. And then, I kept hearing twigs break off to my northwest. And you can see like 70 yards, and then there's a creek in this area covered with the big, with cedar trees, and the limbs come down real low, so you can't see in there at all or beyond it. I've walked in there a bazillion times and stuff, but you can't see. But I kept hearing what sounded like something was snapping twigs. And it sounded close, but I keep looking and there's nothing there. Nothing. And I keep going through the keys, and I'm starting to feel more and more afraid. What is it? What is going on here? There's something over there. And I'm looking for something to satisfy me, like it's a known thing, that it's not anything to be afraid of. And I keep hoping something comes out, and then I hear this, which I've heard it before. It sounds like a deer's making a snort, right? And it's rut season at this time in November, so I'm thinking, okay, it's a buck. And maybe I'm going to see it in a second, but I don't. And it's coming from the same direction. And I get to the second to the last key, and I've already made up my mind. If I get through these keys, because sometimes the locks don't open because they get corroded and stuff like that a little bit, and sometimes they're hard. You have to really turn them to open them. Sometimes you bust the keys off even doing it because they get bad. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going through this ring of keys again. I feel like my world's going to end, like I'm not going to get out of here for something. And it's not. I'm 75 feet away from the road, or 75 yards. There's cars driving by. If there's no leaves on the trees and stuff, I'm not expecting someone's going to come grab me and take me away, or there's any real danger that's there. But I feel that there is. But logically, there shouldn't be, And the key opens it on the second to the last key, so I'm relieved, But I'm still like, every second I'm stopping and looking around. So this was the area where I was hearing all the sounds from, the twigs break and the deer, and this sound was from right here while I was over there checking the camera. And at that time there was really very little water in the creek down there because it had been pretty cold. So there wasn't a lot of noise coming from that to drown anything out from over here. So you could hear, it was really quiet that day too. There wasn't any birds or any wind or anything like that. You could hear really well. Everything was really crisp. And so we came over here the next day and there were impressions from there, back up here and around this corner, and then coming back where it looked like whatever it had gone back and forth a bunch of times. And there were a lot of impressions, and there were a couple of really good ones that were stepping into this last area right here. There was none of this debris on the ground here at all, and it looked like whatever whatever it was doing when it was going back and forth, it was kind of moving in with it was moving fast, kind of, because there were two tracks here where it had dug its front of its foot in just slightly into the duff, and it left all 5 toes with the length of the impression, and we measured them at like 14.5 inches. Not this direction off to my northwest, but directly in front of me. I got my head down, I'm doing this, I hear a and I mean loud and close, and it's right in front of me now, which caught me off guard because I was hearing everything to my right and nothing. I wasn't aware of anything coming up this way while I was standing here, right? And I never heard anything over this direction at all. And so it's right in front of me. So in my mind, I kind of already know what I'm about to see. And I start to lift my head up, and I'm wearing a red hat. And as I'm lifting the brim of my hat up, I can see there's something standing up alongside of that, and his head was probably about as high as those ferns. I know in my mind what it is. It's like something that made an exhale groan, like in disappointment, disgust. That is the tone of it. Like it's just frustrated, like it's making you aware. And I start to lift up my head, and I'm wearing a red hat. And as I'm lifting up my head, under the brim of my hat, I see there's something standing right next to a big alder tree about 20 yards in front of me. And as I'm lifting up my head, it like knows I'm gonna see it. And so it starts to kind of duck down, and it goes from standing upright along this tree, and it kind of starts to duck, and in the same movement it shoots across this opening, but faces me the whole time. Started to kind of duck down, like I said, about 1/3 of its total height. So its head still would have been about where I'm at now, maybe around here, and it shuffled that way until it was out of view, and I heard nothing. It was just complete. I didn't hear anything break or nothing. So I'm assuming that it just got out of my view and it stopped and it didn't go anywhere. Because I don't see how you could make it through any of this without making a lot of noise. There's just dead and broken trees everywhere. And it was huge. I could see there was stuff stuck in its hair, like twigs or something. It was really big and bushy. I mean, it looked like the size of a freaking Volkswagen. It was humongous. And it moved so fast, it was frightening in its speed. And it was silent. There wasn't a noise when it moved. And we didn't find any tracks here. I came back the next day and nothing in this spot. No approach, no leave. I mean, nothing. But then we went and looked over there, which is where I heard all the noise coming from the whole time, which I assumed was a diversion later. Like there was 2, and one was diverting my attention while one was close to me the whole time. And I knew the first thing that went through my mind is that if I try to run, there's no way I can get away. This thing's, it'll catch me by the time I take 4 steps. It's 20 yards from me, but it'll be that fast. I mean, because it moved that quick. And it was just big, powerful, and fast. And you could tell. And so I decided that I was just going to run straight to the road, go right through the blackberry bushes, because there's no way I'd make it to my car. My car's like 200 yards that way, road's 75 yards. And that's my safest bet to get to the road, because I thought I was dead. I thought I was dying right there. That was the feeling in me. That is the feeling that whatever was projected in me, whatever it was, that is what I felt. And I started feeling it before the incident even happened. And it wasn't something that I was even thinking of. I wasn't trying to ignore it. I didn't want to deal with this. It was not something that was, I shouldn't be concerned like this, is what I was thinking. Why am I feeling this way? It's not normal. This is out of context with everything. This is not logical that I'm feeling this way. It's like something projected the feeling into me. You know, pretty much immediately after that happened, something started happening to me every night. I'd wake up for about 2 months straight at 3 a.m. in the morning. And every morning, like clockwork, bam, I'd sit up wide awake. And it would be, I would have a very strong impression. Like, stop looking for them, stop doing cameras, never any consequence. And it was like a third person thing. It wasn't like something was speaking to me or anything like that. I just had a strong impression in me when I'd wake up at 3 a.m. And it was always 3 a.m. on the dot, right after, or right at the end, towards the end of when I kept getting woken up at 3 a.m. And I stepped out of my car and a Sasquatch screamed at me, just like the high-pitched screams you would hear on recordings on the internet, 20 feet from my car across the street from my house. And I live in a residential area. There's a lot of greenbelt and stuff. But I live around other houses. And this was clear as day, volume 10, meant to let me know, we know where you live. And frankly, I'll tell you, I've done some TV stuff and some interviews and stuff, and I've gone out in the woods a little bit beyond that, but I feel extreme guilt if I do. Like I'm not supposed to be doing it. And no consequence has ever been expressed, at least any feeling of any consequence or anything like that, because I've tried to seek that out, but nothing has been there. But I just feel really strongly that I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to look anymore. I have a real intense feeling, and I have it right now when I'm talking to you even. And that's all I know about it. But I can tell you the whole thing's weird. The DNA's weird, the stories are weird, and they happen over and over and over again. And, you know, it happened to me. And there's this thing, this phenomenon that people claim, they call it zapping. And the theory is that these things use infrasound. You know, infrasound, low frequency vibration. Okay. And to make you feel a certain way. The military uses infrasound. They can make people physically ill with it. And different people feel different stuff at different incidents. Like in my incident, I felt this out of context fear before anything even happened, and just kind of not right. And afterwards, I didn't feel, my heart didn't beat right, and everything was weird, you know. And I kind of feel like that I kind of experienced that to a degree, and there was some desired effect in the way that they did it that they want out of me. And other people just get so sick, they throw up and they get vertigo and dizzy, or they lose their sense of direction, or they get lost, or all different kinds of things happen when they feel like they're in the presence of these things. Sometimes it can be that way. Sometimes nothing. Some people claim to smell real strong stink and smell, and other times they don't. And I've never smelt that where I knew I was in the presence or anything like that. But that's pretty much my story.
First encounter as a child was on the riverbank with my dad. We were fishing. I was about 5. I still remember this very, very clear. My dad told me to stay there, don't do anything crazy, stay away from the edge of the river. He went down to the edge of the river at the bottoms, and he was setting his poles up. And he was about 40 yards down north of me. So I'm sitting there doing what little boys do. It was a pecan tree, so I'm picking up pecans and I'm throwing pecans. And just doing what little boys do. I'm having a heyday. Well, my little goofy self decided to head on over to the edge of the river. I got to the edge of the river, and I'm sitting there throwing dirt clods in, finding rocks, throwing them in there. And I don't know what possessed me. Something possessed me to start jumping up and down, landing on the edge. I never thought the edge would give, but it did. And when the edge went, I went with it. And it's about a 10-foot fall. Maybe a good 8-foot fall, then you hit the little embankment on it, and then it goes into the river. Well, as I was falling, my arms were in the air, and someone caught me. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what's going on. And I just remember being lifted up and being brought in, and what, to my knowledge at the time of a 5-year-old, was I'm looking at a big dog that's holding me. And then I sat and looked at him, and I knew it wasn't a dog. Now I'm looking at a monkey. And I can still remember him very, very clearly. And he was just looking at me and he was smiling. So I'm smiling back and I'm trying to figure out what he is. Why do I have a monkey holding me? That's what I'm actually thinking. And I remember him walking over to where my dad was at, and my dad's down below. And the Bigfoot actually put me down, and he pointed and gestured over to my dad. So I'm sitting there still looking at him, trying to figure him out. He's big, he's hairy, and I'm just looking at him. But there was no smell, no bad smell whatsoever. So I'm sitting here still trying to figure it out, and he keeps pointing towards my dad.
Got bit by a copperhead. Came out of nowhere and got me right above my boot in my leg. And I was trying not to panic because my granddad always told me, if you ever get bit by a snake, especially a copperhead out here, he said, don't panic. Just walk slowly. Well, I had already started panicking. I sat down against this tree and was trying to assess this, exactly where the bite was, and I had an old bandana and I tied it above my leg. And about that same time, I see this mountain lion coming towards me. He is screaming and making all kinds of racket. And I fired my .22 at him a few times, and it just pissed him off really. Trying to get at me, and by this point I'm thinking I'm gonna die out here in the woods and my granddad will never know. Well, that feeling I had of being watched, just thinking back on it now, the state of mind that I was in, I was terrified. I thought I was about to die. I was just ready for it, and I had my gun pointed at this cougar, shooting at it, but it just did nothing. Then all of a sudden, I hear what sounds like a bulldozer coming through the trees. And it came up from behind me. The cat, looked like a normal, like house cats get whenever they're scared. Well, all of a sudden, this big, giant flash of brown fur comes out of nowhere, picks up this cat, slams it against the nearest tree in one foul swoop. I'm shaking at this point, and what I can see in front of me is a tall, bipedal Sasquatch. That's just what it was in my head. But my granddad had always called them wood boogers. I hadn't heard the term Sasquatch till then, or, till later. But he always called them wood boogers or wood woes. Well, this big mass of hair and muscle just turns around, and I can see it's a female. And I'm sitting against a tree, and she turns around looking at me. I'm shaking right now, just terrified. And the strangest thing starts to happen. She is acting like she's trying to calm me down with her hands, and she starts making this like cooing noise deep within her chest. I still can't explain it to this day. I hear people talk about infrasound, and I'm guessing maybe that's what it was, because what it seemed to do is instantly calm me. And even thinking back on it now, it blows my mind that happened. Well, she eases up to me and looks at my leg and then picks me up like a baby and ran me back towards my granddad's place. We were about a good mile and a half in the woods. Now, by this time, I was coming in and out of consciousness, but I know that she was carrying me. And a lot of people say they smell horrible, but this one, she didn't smell horrible. She smelled like a horse, kind of. Like a mix between a horse that's been outside all day. She didn't stink, she had an odor to her. Well, she ran me back to my granddad's house, and remember waking up with her holding me, and I'm looking at the house, and she lets out this really loud whoop. It felt like it blew my eardrums out, honestly. And I'm thinking at this point, oh my God, my granddad's about to freak out. You know, he's going to kill her or something. And he comes out, and his reaction is not what I expected. He runs up to me, and she points at my leg because I had pulled my jeans up. She points to my leg, makes this like grunting noise, and she sounds like she's purring too. He looks at my leg, looks at her, shakes his head like saying thank you, picks me up, puts me in the truck, and then I pass out, and then I wake up in the hospital about 12 hours later.
They're always watching, always. I'm going to turn the camera, and as soon as I look at them, they're going to go, but just keep an eye out. Watch. There they go. So I'm not going to go pursue them because their structures are right over there. And as long as they stay on that side of the structures, they're not bothering me. And as long as I stay on this side, I'm not bothering them. We'll get with the gifting rock here pretty soon. Snow started to melt now, so I can get back there. But anyway, yeah, pretty cool.
I remember his eyes. They weren't the eyes of an animal. There was something in them, something I recognized even at 7 years old in the dim light of that cave where he had taken me after pulling me from the river. Intelligence, concern, something that so closely resembled the love my mother gave me when I had a fever, that for a moment I forgot the terror of not knowing where I was. Those eyes looked at me from the darkness, enormous, reflecting the faint light that entered through the cave entrance. And in that moment, even as a child, I knew that what had saved me was not human, but it wasn't a monster either. It was something else, something the world had forgotten existed.
I had only been walking about 10 minutes or so when I started hearing noises in the woods. Right away, my brain screamed, bear. I started hyperventilating. My whole body went hot and started shaking. I could hear it coming before I could see it, and I knew I was definitely going to get attacked. And then, out of the blue, I got hit from the side, and I felt my body flying through the air. And yes, I hit a tree. Then, right before I lost consciousness, I started hearing the sounds of a very violent fight. And it was about that time that the creepy dream started. I dreamt that I was being cared for by the strangest looking family. They reminded me of the Addams family. I remember the one who was taking the most care of me had so much hair hanging in front of her eyes. I can see myself in my dream reaching up and moving the hair aside and seeing her very loving and kind, warm brown eyes staring back at me. I wasn't afraid because I knew it was a dream, LOL. I remember in my dream there was a baby, and I knew the one that was taking care of me was its mother, and she was breastfeeding it. There was another one that was also a little bit older, and it would just walk over and stand there breastfeeding on the other side. It was like her breast was its own personal sippy cup. I could see another one further back, and it was much larger than the one that was taking care of me. Also, instinctively, I knew that it was her mate, and somehow I knew that he was the one that saved me. I vaguely recall that I only saw him once or twice. There was some older ones as well, and they would come in and out of the dream. They all spoke in an odd language that almost made me want to laugh. It was like they were gurgling with spit. I think I can recall that it sounded like they put a lot of spit at the back of their throat when they spoke, and naturally it would make this gurgling sound.
Absolutely massive monster looking down at him. About 3 feet away, just looking at him, and his head kind of going back and forth like this. And he can't scream, he can't yell, there's nothing he can do. And he was so terrified that his mind just started like shutting down because it couldn't deal with this reality that he was experiencing. And then he hears this rubbing, like sliding sound, and this creature pulled off the top log and kind of flipped it down the slope, and it rolled down the slope. Then he saw these two massive hands reach in and grab the second log and pick it up and flip it over again. And that you could hear it roll and kind of go down the slope again. And this creature is like just a few feet away, just looking at him. And he sees these massive hands come down, grab the third log that's on his chest, and it picks it up. And it makes this really loud grunt sound because it's so heavy. And he said this log was about as round as a basketball. Takes this log, he's not lifting it up, but he's getting it upright, and he rolls it down. He can hear it roll down the hill. And then he said, Chris, at this moment, I could breathe again. I was absolutely terrified, but the pressure was off, and I could breathe.
Tell me about your experience.
Well, we were up on a mountain, and we have a 100-acre private property up there that my family owns, but no one goes there except my sister and I and her husband and my boyfriend. We basically take care of the 100 acres and the grass and the shelters and everything else up there. So I don't remember that time, though, if we were camping or if we'd been cleaning and working, because it's been quite a while. But anyway, there's no road to that area. It's just grass, and you have to know what you're doing and where you're going in order to get there, because there's no markings, right? Okay, so we're coming back down off the grass, getting ready to get on a kind of a road, but yet untraveled. So, and I don't know why, but for some reason I looked to the right, as if someone would be coming when there's nobody up there. Right? Okay, so I saw this very tall, I think it was hairy, but more of what I saw was vining, weeds, some sort of green, possible pine needles in it. There were pieces or on it. There was no in it. It was on it. Pieces of like probably white pine, which is not native there either. This is all from prior strip mining. They reforested. Not my section. Is 100 acres of very old land where it has never been touched, underground or above ground. Okay, so we're down on that section. But I don't know, like, it's hard to say what it was, because at first I thought it was a hunter, and then I thought that's the biggest man I've ever seen in my life. And then I thought, you have all these thoughts, because you don't see people up there anyway, unless they're in a vehicle driving. Okay, so I'm like, why is someone there? Okay, long story short, so I couldn't really, from that distance, make it out, but I know it had to be over 8 feet, because I've been in that same spot in front of a gas well, which has stairs that come down off of it. I've been there touching probably the 3rd or 4th step, and I'm almost 6 feet tall. So this thing I counted up afterward, thinking, oh, that's where it was, right? Okay, right around there. It was around 8 to 9 feet high, tall. But we went looking for it, because I was scrambling for my phone, couldn't find the phone. I don't know how to explain the panic mode that came over me when I realized that's not a human. That's not a hunter. This is all posted private property. There's never anybody hunting, right? And then why would someone, it was chilly, but my son's a Marine. My first husband was Army. That was by no means anything that a military person would wear hunting. Ghillie suit, right? It was definitely not that. Just because of the large size, which I could tell, even from as far away as I could tell that there was large red, because it was early spring. And if you'll notice, the poison oak and the poison ivy is really red right now. Yeah, and I noticed that on it. And then the arms, that was the other weird thing. It turned slightly, only the head, and kind of glanced, because I thought it was a tree stump. I thought somebody cut a tree. I'm like, there was never a tree in front of that gas well. What is that? Okay, because I've been up there 50 plus years. Okay, so then when I saw that, I was like, is that a bear? I'm like, that's not Boo Boo. We have a pet bear up there. He passed away, but anyway, his name is Boo Boo. Well, as pet as you can get for that area. But It wasn't a bear, I knew. And then I'm scrambling for my phone. Didn't want to take my eyes off it, which I didn't. I never found my phone to get pictures. I never found anything. So my boyfriend, he got back in the truck, and I'm like, did you see that? And he's like, what is wrong? He's like, you're like pale as white as a sheet. And I said, I don't know what I saw, but it turned its whole body as if to like say, I see you, but it did nothing. It didn't move its arms. It didn't move it just shifted its entire body. And then literally 2 steps, gone.
If you ever felt the chill of something watching you in the woods, you're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own encounter in the comments below. The mountains are watching. Are you? As always, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.